You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 194 of the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. Today, we're heading to the eastern side of England to Lincolnshire to meet arable farmer and runner Charles Anyan, who farms 346 hectares of land at Springthorpe near Gainsborough in the northwest of the county. Cropping includes a fairly standard rotation of wheat, barley, oilseed rape, and spring beans. Charles also runs a small DIY livery yard and is involved in a couple of mid-tier stewardship schemes. He's been back on the family farm since 2006, following various jobs in Australia and a degree at Newcastle University. Anyone who follows Charles on social media will know that running has become a massive part of his life since the lockdowns, and he has now run 2 marathons with another 2 planned for this year. In fact, there's one next week. He also tells me he enjoys playing rugby, cycling, travel, and hill walking in the lakes or the peaks. He's also become a prominent advocate for talking about mental health and is an ambassador for the Farming Community Network. Charles, welcome to Meet the Farmers. How is your week going?
Morning. Yes, no, it's going well, thank you. We've had a very, very wet March, and the sun has just started shining in Lincolnshire. Spring has sprung. Bit of forecast for a bit more rain the next few days, but I think everything just looks a bit better when the sun's shining and we've managed to get a bit of work done.
Yeah, no, I think it's a similar story in many parts of the country at the moment. Let's start with Lincolnshire. I don't really know your part of the county that well at all, actually. So what's it like up there?
Yeah, it's not a bad part of the world, really. I farm in a little village called Springthorpe, which is essentially 4 miles east of a town called Gainsborough, once the capital of England for 5 days.
Oh, really?
And I'm equidistant between Lincoln, Scunthorpe, Grimsby's not too far away, Sheffield's not too far away, Hull's not too far away. It's a decent, honest part of the world. It's very much a farming part of the world. It's not the most affluent part of the world, but it's home. And, I wouldn't really want to be anywhere else. And from my other, interests, my hill walking interests, one of the good things about this part of the world is we're now from the Peak District, 90 minutes from the Yorkshire Dale, 2.5 hours from the lake, and about 2 hours from Twickenham. So we are fairly central. It's not a bad part of the world. It's a place I call home.
How long has the farm been in the family?
About 200 years.
Oh, wow.
So, and we're still renting. So, quite an achievement. Yeah, 1820, I think we started farming in Springthorpe, and the farm's gone through various guises. But we're not quite ring fenced. We do have another farm, a smaller farm, just up near Brigg, Scunthorpe, just on the A15. It's a decent part of the world, and we've been here a long time.
And since, I suppose, compared to when you were growing up on the farm, how has it changed sort of over that time?
Well, when I was a child, there was a lot more livestock, suckler herd, and we've expanded slightly, but we've consolidated what we've done, really. We've got a few properties on the farm as well, and they've increased. So but our land here is very much cereal production. It wouldn't really cater for sugar beet. It's quite heavy old soil.
Right.
No potatoes, so it's ideal cereal growing land.
That was going to be my next question, actually, because you do have a range of soils up in Lincolnshire, don't you?
Yeah. There's some very the black silty soils down on the fens. We got limestone cliff not too far away. In fact, our farm at Hibblestow is limestone cliff. It's always our banker, the Hibblestow farm, because it dries out a lot quicker than the soil at Springthorpe. So if in a wet time we can't really do much at Springthorpe, then we head up there. But I think the best thing about this soil, and especially going forward with climate change, is with it being so heavy. It was once described by a soil scientist as chalky boulder clay, but without the chalk. it's very moisture retentive. So last year in a very dry summer, the crops did well because it holds moisture so well. But obviously in a wet time, it's got its drawbacks. But I wouldn't change it. It can grow very decent 10-ton plus crops of wheat. Yeah, I think in Lincolnshire as well, we're very lucky to have such a farming friendly climate. So it's not just the soils which make Lincolnshire. I'm very biased. The bread basket of Lincolnshire. It's the everything else that comes with it.
Yeah, well, you've famously got the regot, I should say, the world record for wheat yield again, haven't you? Now, so
yeah, I know. Well, Tim Lammerman is over Louth way. I don't know Tim, but it's always interesting and always a matter of pride when he manages to take it again off the New Zealand.
yeah,
But,
it bounces back and forth. This episode is being supported by our primary sponsor, A-Plan Rural. Why did I want to collaborate with A-Plan Rural? Well, having got to know them, their team shares my passion for giving a voice to farmers, and we are both driven to raise the profile of farming voices to a wider audience. So it seemed quite a good fit. Quite frankly, together we will be able to do a lot more. A-Plan Rural do a lot of work on social media themselves, sharing farming accounts and farming stories. They have a rural community blog which shares farmers' experiences, and they also support a growing number of initiatives that champion UK farmers, including this podcast. So a big thank you to A-Plan Rural for supporting Meet the Farmers. Let's talk a bit about you, where sort of your path. So you went to Newcastle. Tell me a bit about your time there.
I did. I went to the University of Newcastle upon Tyne, rather Northumbria. It's a lovely part of the world, but like most people at universities, I just seem to spend my time drinking quite a lot of beer and playing an awful lot of rugby.
Yep.
But I remember some fantastic times up at Newcastle. I went to boarding school in the north as well. Okay. So I've always veered towards the north of England rather than the south. I think my course was very much a bit of a mix match of various things: economics, marketing, management. So we didn't do anything in great depth, but we did quite an awful lot of things. We touched on an awful lot of things. It was agribusiness management. But I managed to get a 2-1, which was, I think, more luck than judgment. And it was just lovely to be in such a fantastic part of the world. I think Newcastle's very underrated. It's a beautiful city. It's got the highest proportion of Grade 1 buildings outside of London, and it's in Northumberland. You got Tynedale on the doorstep, so we were always getting out and about at weekends. And my rugby commitments got me to some fantastic places. My rugby commitments also got me to some not so fantastic places. But a lovely 3 years, met some lovely friends, and had a great time. And I actually went back up to Newcastle in December. I did the Great North Run last year, but into the centre of Newcastle, I got into the centre of Newcastle, and I've just forgotten what a lovely place it was. And I suppose the main thing that I got from my 3 years at university, rather than a degree as well as a degree, was a love of Newcastle United, and delighted to see them going well now.
It's bizarre. It's not a city that I know at all, but whenever I speak to anyone who does know it, or really rave about it, so it's clearly a place where we should all head up to.
I think when I went to Newcastle, when things like this were important to me, it was the 9th best nightlife in the world, and the Geordies, they're a lovely bunch.
Yeah.
And now, as I said, it's just a stunning city. You're on the coast, and you're not too far from Tynemouth Priory. And as I say, you're very close to Northumberland. We used to go up to Bamborough and Corbridge, Tynedale. No, stunning.
Nice. And talking of other nice parts of the world, you have spent quite a bit of time in Australia, and you're actually down there quite recently too. When and why has Oz featured so much in your life, do you think?
Well, when I was at a boarding school called Sedbergh School, just in the Yorkshire Dales National Park, but it was actually in Cumbria. So it was right on the border between the Yorkshire Dales National Park and the Lake District. And we had an exchange with a school in Sydney, just on the North
Right.
Shore in Sydney. So basically, they would send one of their students who just left school to Sedbergh to photocopy, cover relief classes, and just generally experience life 10,000 miles away from home. And with it being an exchange, I got the benefit of going to spend 7 months in Sydney. And
Wow.
it
Amazing.
was quite funny. The guys who went from the school I was working in Sydney to Sedbergh, they got into quite a lot of trouble. I think their contracts were terminated early.
Really?
But I don't think their behaviour was any better than ours, any worse than ours in Sydney. However, to be an Australian in a small Cumbrian market town, you're not quite as anonymous as being a Brit in Sydney.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, no, fantastic times. And my time in Australia, I met some, lovely friends. I played rugby out there, and I met a family who adopted me. So luckily, I'm very lucky to have an English family, my biological family, and then an Australian family. So
Yeah, nice.
so it's nice to go down and see them every few years. None of us are getting any younger. So I was over there at Christmas. But then I suppose 4 years after that was just before the 2000 Olympics, I went back over. I think I got a bit of a graduate job, which didn't
Okay.
really meet expectations. Then I thought, I'll go back out to Australia. And I was over there for 18 months, just generally working, but door-to-door sales. And I got, plenty of jobs on building sites. So I kept away from the farming
Okay.
thing, cultivated more friendships. So yeah, no, I've got a lot of friends over there. I've got a lot of memories over there.
Yeah.
So it was lovely to go over for the first time in about 9 years. I went over in 2013 just for a month, just to see everybody. And I was over there at Christmas, and yeah, no, it's lovely to see them all behaving incredibly badly, just as I left them. And obviously, their families getting bigger, and it was just lovely to spend some time with them and have a few beers with them, and yeah, keep the friendships going.
Have
I
you
don't speak. Sorry,
have you explored much of the rest of the country? Also, do you base yourself
I,
mostly around Sydney or?
I did in 2000. I went on a flying trip. We saw. I went up the East Coast and Adelaide. I've never been to Perth, so I have in Tasmania. I've been to Tasmania, so I've seen quite a lot of Australia. But this last time was just I spent 5 days up the coast, and my friends have got a beach house 4 hours north of Sydney,
Oh, nice.
and then the rest of the time in Sydney. I prefer England. England is the best country in the world. We've got our problems,
Yeah, we
but
do.
it's
It's not a
it's
bad place to live.
no, but when you compare it to a lot of places around the world, our problems are very insignificant.
Yeah.
But Sydney, despite Doncaster's recent claim being made a city, Sydney is the best city in the world, and it is just such a stunning place to, just generally potter and wander down onto the harbour, the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge. These are images we all always grew up with.
Yeah.
Seven wonders of the world, seven wonders of the modern world. Sydney Opera House and Harbour Bridge is something you can't avoid. And I remember going over when I was 18, and you saw them for the first time, and the hairs would stand up on the back of your neck. And going back recently to places that I've spent a lot of time, the hairs still stand up on the back of the neck. It's a truly magical place.
Let's turn our back to the UK and talk a little bit about farming policy, which is one of the things that you wanted to talk about when you came on. So yeah, when we were planning the episode, you mentioned your frustration, let's say that, regarding food and farming policy currently. I just wonder what those frustrations are for you and what you would like to see moving forwards when it comes to how farmers and the government work together. Nice
Well,
and
I think
collaborative on a Wednesday morning.
yeah, the biggest problem with farming policy is there doesn't seem to be one, which is very frustrating. You look
Yep.
at ELMs, we've always gone down the environmental stewardship. We're struggling. Well, I'm struggling to understand really what ELMs means. It's just, well, really frustrating. And chemicals seem to Plant protection products, as we should call them, seem to be getting fewer and fewer.
Yeah.
There seems to be knee-jerk reaction. The environmental lobby, I see urea's under threat now. And there just seems to be total lack of knowledge of where food is going to come from. We're very keen importers of food, far too keen importers of food. But if everybody starts jumping on the bandwagon to ban the urea, which we don't use, we're ammonium nitrate people, fertilizer produces an awful lot of food around this world. And without it, there's going to be an awful lot of starvation. But the simple fact that all these plant protection products over the last 10, 15 years just keep disappearing, it's making farming really, really difficult. Our main break crop, like many people around the UK, has always been oilseed rape. When you look at the chemicals which have been banned for the production of oilseed rape, it's now a very, very high risk crop. And just due to poor legislation, and glyphosate's always under the cosh. It just seems to be constant. It's constant, constant, constant. And
Are you experimenting with other bread crops?
yeah. We've always been traditional spring bean growers as well.
Yeah.
But on our land, you don't always get a spring. So we're quite lucky this year. We got quite a lot of our spring beans in February. We got quite a lot of our spring barley in February. We do have 19 acres to go on some very, very heavy land of spring beans. And will we get them in? I don't really know. So, ours is very much a winter cropping farm. There are other options, the canary seeds, but they're not very appealing. So it's just a case of, in order to get a decent first wheat, it's becoming more and more difficult. Whereas 10, 15 years ago, it was, when oilseed rape was a decent crop to grow, you didn't really have to worry about it. But now it's just, you do generally worry about getting crops in the ground. The net zero thing, I'm all supportive of doing our best to get through net zero, but the rhetoric coming out of the media, the environmentalists, it's just making life very difficult. Politicians seem very keen to talk to the environmentalists, but not so keen to get on board talking to farmers. I think they just assume wrongly that there's always going to be food on the supermarket shelf, that we do have to buy British. But then again, there's a lot of people, especially in this neck of the woods, that probably can't afford to buy British. So it's a real poison.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because a few weeks ago we had Veggate, Saladgate, whatever you want to call it, on the shelves, and we had like a week, maybe 2 weeks of conversation erring towards that subject. But then that's the issue with the media, isn't it? So straight away, people just forget straight away.
Yeah, I think we're a very just-in-time nation, if you know what I mean. That we things just get generally forgotten. We're very proud environmentalists here in Springthorpe, and what we do, and we always try and balance a healthy environment with healthy food production. But these environmental schemes, we're very lucky. We've got a lot of small field corners which we can throw in on an income for gone basis. I don't know who's decided up the income for gone, but they're just not realistic. Hedges, when we first started HLS in 2007, you got paid £11 per 100 metres of hedges. Now it's £10, up from 9, and you can't. We've got 30 kilometres of hedges on the farm. They're just a liability. They're great for the small bees and the birds, but obviously you've got your hedge, then you need 2 metres either side, and hedges just are not acknowledged. They're not appreciated enough by the government. And,
Are you even considering ELMs at the moment? Are you looking into it?
we are looking into it. We've got 2 environmental agreements, and we have just started. Well, we started many years ago renting 80 acres from a neighbour, and the neighbour always did his own environmental scheme, and we cropped the land. But that neighbour sadly passed away in February.
Okay.
So we are farming it from his nephew, who also happens to be my best mate.
Oh,
So
really?
we're
Okay.
yeah, we are taking on the environmental ourselves. So we'll be looking at ELMs for countryside stewardship, and then there's a sustainable farming incentive to look at. There's an awful lot of things which my dad says that, when he was farming in the 70s, he didn't have to think about all this kind of thing. You just,
Mm.
farmed, he wanted food, and you just carried on. But yeah, yeah. Now we'll be looking at ELMs and CSS just to work out which is the best one for us. And I said about our hedges, our average field size is 6 hectares. I think our 15 smallest fields, cropped fields, come to about 93 acres. So we are essentially farming in a museum.
I mean, there's obviously what's happening over in Ukraine, various other global events, so the Southern Hemisphere, uh, affecting input prices, and it's highly unlikely for what everyone says that so that we're going to see fert prices going down to what we had before, diesel prices going back to what we had before. We are probably in a different world, and at the same time, we've got this changing policy landscape. So again, bringing it back to your farm on a farm level, looking ahead a few years post 27, 28, as a 350 hectare, 850 acre and old money arable farm with fairly standard rotation. How does your economic future, I suppose, look at the moment?
Yeah, we're very much in the uncertain, aren't we? And Ms. Coffey, in her role, just shows the government ambition to agriculture. Our farming leaders and generally us as farmers, we got our work cut out to lobby the government and to show them the importance of food production. Over the last couple of years, being a cereal farmer, I've essentially been living a charmed life. Just look at the livestock guys. It's been
Yeah,
absolutely brutal for them.
yeah.
What has been good for me has been bad for them, and our pork industry have suffered so much. We just need a bit of protection. Those guys need a bit of protection. And I know over the years on this farm, we've looked at laying hens, and we've looked at pig production just as a diversification. And yeah, I've absolutely no regrets that we didn't go down that route. If you know what I mean. The next few years are going to be critical, but the government certainly need to start waking up and see the importance of food production. Otherwise, 5 years down the line, it could be catastrophic.
Well, I mean, without taking the danger of predicting elections, we may well have a change coming up soon. We'll see. We'll see if anything changes.
Well, absolutely, because we haven't got the opportunity here to grow houses on the farm, and there isn't the disposable income in this neck of the woods to do anything big to get the public in and make money that way. So we are essentially relying on food production to pay the bills over the next few years. It's worrying time, but I still, even when things are worrying time, I do still think we do have the best job in the world. We've got the best office in the world, and yeah, no, I like nothing more than sitting on a tractor for the day. We got the red arrows floating around there, based very locally. We got the
Awesome.
buzzards. We got the odd red kite. We've got wonderful wildlife. It's a really great place to be. And even when the chips are down, it's still a great place to be, if you know what I mean. Really good for the soul.
Just a little more about our primary sponsor, A Plan Rural. They provide bespoke insurance cover for farms and estates. This could be for anything from tractors and machinery to a new exciting diversification venture. So for more information, visit aplan.co.uk/rural. That's aplan.co.uk/rural. Yeah, well, it's the attitude to have for sure. And actually, that leads us quite nicely, I suppose, onto the next topic, which is moving on to your running, because this has become a massive part of your life, and your recent life, and your recent life story, I suppose. You'd started during lockdown, and you didn't even own a pair of trainers, which I find amazing. I love that story. But you ended up losing around 5 stone. You've seen
Yeah,
improvements
yeah.
in You've run marathons, your plans for more. You're a strong advocate for both exercise and mental health. Why did you start running? Because yeah,
Uh,
I think I actually know you over Twitter because of running, because you just all of a sudden started coming into my feed loads. It's like, oh my goodness, Charles is running like all the time.
yeah,
But
no,
why did
it,
you start?
it's really bizarre because obviously I used to think people own trainers were fairly dreadful. In fact, I still do to a certain degree. I'm just one of them. Before COVID, I was obviously a 17 stone man,
Yeah,
but I was still hill walking. I was the slowest prop forward in the history of my local rugby club.
I love that. And now the slowest winger, I seem to yeah,
Now
see,
the
I remember
slowest
that so
winger.
much. Yeah.
Um, and I used to swim a lot. Obviously, my diet wasn't great. It wasn't a takeaway every night or sitting there with a packet of crisps every night. Because I was swimming 90 lengths, I'd think, well, I've worked hard. I'll treat myself to a Scotch egg on the way home or whatever. And I've worked hard tonight. I'll have some cherry
Yeah.
Bakewell.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you have substituted, well, 700 calories burnt off by 1,000 calories. So you're not actually going. So I was always a big chap. It's just the way I had always been. So you just think, well, that's the way I'm always going to be. And then they shut the swimming pool with COVID at
Yeah.
the start of lockdown one. And I thought, well, that's my main exercise. I'm in serious danger now of blooming from 17 stone up to 20 stone. So I thought, I've got to do something drastic. And then, we got busy on the farm. And then it was Liz Hogarth, who basically Liz from Dent, who is, her mental health story. She's a real advocate due to her experiences.
Yeah.
She challenged me to run 5K, nominate 5 people,
Okay.
and donate £5 to the NHS. Quite a lot of people were doing it at the start of lockdown. And I always love a challenge,
Yeah.
especially a Twitter challenge. So I thought, well, I've got to do this. So I looked for my trainers, which I sort of thought I owned a pair, but I didn't really know where they were. And thought, well, I better do this. And I couldn't find them. And this was towards the end of April 2020. So I thought, right, well, not too shy of a challenge. I went into my orchard in a pair of socks and jogged very slowly a bit and walked an awful lot for about 45 minutes. And then thought it was probably not quite 5K, but people don't need to know that. I've done it.
Yeah.
Here's a selfie
Yep.
of me looking very hot as in warm rather than anything else. And then I thought I better buy some trainers. So I went on Amazon because that was the only place you could actually buy anything in lockdown one. I bought a cheap pair of Asics, and then they arrived on my birthday, which is 24th of April. And I thought I will go for a 5K run. And because, I wasn't desperately unfit with all my swimming. So I went and just round the fields. It was hard work, really hard work. But I managed to knock off 5K in just under 35 minutes. And then I thought that was brutal. But it's my life now with the swimming pool shut. I've got no option. So then I went out the next day on the road and I knocked 2 minutes off that. And I thought, well, I'm not, considering I haven't run since I was at boarding school,
Yeah.
that's not too bad. And then I kept chipping away at it and chipping away at it. And by the 6th run, what I used to do was I would run as far as I could, then do a bit of walking,
Right.
and then carry on running. And I just made sure that every time I just ran a bit further before I started walking. And so you do have apps like the Couch to 5K, which I didn't really realize at the time.
Yep.
And then by the 6th 5K run, I managed to get rid of all the walking. And then I suppose we're doing it more. the weight started coming off and it started getting a bit easier.
Yeah, and then you see that and you think, well, yeah, that's what drives you on a little bit further.
Yeah, and so I kept at it, and I'd mix it in with cycling because apart from work, there wasn't anything else to do in lockdown. So, and we were very fortunate in the farming community that we could still carry on
Yeah, in comparison to a
as
lot of people's
normal.
experiences. Yeah.
So, and then after my ninth 5K, I managed to get my 5K time down under 30 minutes, which I was really quite happy with.
Yeah.
And I just kept chipping away and chipping away. And then after a couple of months, I thought I'll take it up to 6K, and 6K became 7K. I was quite meticulous. And by June, I was running fairly slowly 10K and just carried on consolidating and consolidating and consolidating. By which time I was down to about 13 stone because running is quite high impact. Wow. And not only is running quite high impact, I wasn't coming home via the swimming by the supermarket. So the Scotch eggs had dropped off. And the cherry
that's amazing though. So it was quite that's not a long time. That's not a long time.
No, it dropped off really quickly. And I think by December of that year I was down to 12 stone, what I am now. And you're always happy because you're always losing. So I remember getting to 14 stone 9 thinking, oh crikey. The idea of being 14 stone 9, so I'm quite short, it's horrific. But at the time, I was just well chuffed.
Yeah.
And I got involved with a couple of these virtual events, the virtual 10Ks, and which gave me more incentive to go a bit quicker. And then soon started realizing that no one expected it, especially me, that I wasn't actually too bad at running. And because mentally, I've always been very lucky. Mentally, I've always been, fairly strong.
Yeah, and dare I say, this comes across in actually your, I suppose, the determination and the steady sort of improvement and just getting out there and doing it. That's a big part of running, isn't it? So much of it.
Absolutely, and because I posted all my runs on Twitter, just so I was accountable, and I think people started seeing me differently, and I started seeing myself differently, and which spurred me on even more. I was quite a fit, being known as the quite fit guy, whereas before lockdown I was Charles Anyan, the guy who's knocked me out on his way to his 4th bacon sandwich at the NFU conference type thing. And as I say, I've always been quite lucky mentally, but when you're looking in the mirror and there isn't a guy staring back with 2-3 chins, your mental health my mental health was a lot better, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So was it because obviously you're very keen, you're an ambassador for FCN and a very keen mental health ambassador generally. So I mean, was it partly that personal experience that actually made you think about it, or was it talking to others? When did you sort of really start making that link between physical health and mental health?
Well, I got involved with Run 1000 in its first year.
Yeah.
Where I was, England team captain, and I'd never spared a thought, luckily, for mental health charities. Lincolnshire Rural Support Network, because they do some wonderful work in Lincolnshire, and a lot of people I know work for them. I got involved with this Run 1000, and I had to decide on a charity. And I didn't really know any charities because I'd never given it any thought. It couldn't be LRSN because it was a national event, and LRSN are very much Lincolnshire based. And I'd sort of heard of FCN, and I didn't give it really much thought at all, and just thought, well, we'll donate our money to FCN. They've got a mental health arm.
Okay.
And obviously that happened, and we had a lovely January, and Team England very proudly. I split up with a long-term partner at the start of that January, and we were locked down. It gave me something to do.
Yeah,
Raising money,
Yeah.
gave me something to do, and delighted. Team England, we managed to raise 19,000 quid. I think the whole initiative raised 50,000 quid,
Yeah.
and so that was my first connection with the farming community network. It got me on their radar, it got them on my radar, and the rest, as they say, is history. But
Yeah.
it was in that Run 1000 thing. It was just before New Year, just before it started, where my marathon ambitions started, because I had too much Malbec one night, as I occasionally do. And by the time I
That's
woke
fun.
up, yeah, by the time I woke up, I had gone on Twitter, and I'm one of those try and think that I lead from the front. And I said, if we get over £5,000 raised for Team England, and we were 4,300 at the time, I will run a marathon.
That's when it happened. Right. Okay.
And I woke up the next morning and saw this all on Twitter, that I had posted a video saying, I'm going to run a marathon for FCN, for Run 1000, for Team England. And so I woke up, got all over Twitter, and slightly more worryingly, the Team England Just Giving page had passed 5,000.
Fantastic.
So I was committed. And I'd done, I think in the November, I had done my first practice half marathon with not having a marathon in mind, but it just, my running had progressed to getting a half marathon, which had gone fairly well. And yeah, so I got a bit excited after too much alcohol. And
I love the irony.
yeah. And I remember I went out for a long run on New Year's Day, and before that point, I was thinking, well, it's going to be slow, it's going to be painful, it's going to be a real bloodbath. But everybody will think, oh, he's doing it for 1,000, he'll be fine. And then I went out and did a 20-mile run on New Year's Day. And I got that thinking, I'm actually backing myself now to run that first marathon on my own on the streets around here. Well, I wasn't totally on my own. I had Dad driving the Freelander for my water support, with a Labrador asleep on the back seat. So I thought, I'm going to go under 4 hours if everything comes right. And I remember the 23rd of January 2020, I went out from my conservatory and ran a marathon in 3 hours 53. And this was really out of character. This led to quite an increase in the fundraising. Everybody was so generous, and everybody heard that I was going to run a marathon. Probably a lot of people hadn't seen pictures of me. They just thought, oh, what, Charles is running a marathon? What, the fat guy? Yeah, well, get the defibrillator out. This is going to be an absolute car crash. And then, so they all threw money at me, and it was lovely. And then I got round in under 4 hours, and they threw more money at me.
Fantastic.
And it was just lovely. And at that point, I suppose I really thought that there is something in this. I've been Combinable Crops Committee local for, on the NFU for a long time, but I think I'd stopped making a difference. Whereas with this, with my running, I thought I was probably able to make a difference with this, which spurred me on even more. And so that, as I say, that is how myself and FCN got acquainted. And it's such a lovely charity.
I mean, talking about mental health generally, and it's something that we touch on quite a bit on the show actually over time, and certainly in comparison to a few years ago, it feels like it's far more out in the open. But what is your take on that idea? I mean, that word stigma. Have we broken the stigma of talking about mental health in farming yet?
I think we're improving. I think we are improving. But the thing that gets me is, and my upcoming marathon, it's not only to raise money, because obviously I've taken quite a lot of money off people over the years. People are going to stop giving at some point. They've been very generous this time. But it's also to break the stigma. And every time, we all know someone tragically who's lost, ended their life. And not just in farming, but generally, a comment which comes up time and time again about the person that's just ended their life is, well, they were the last person I expected. And they seem so happy. They just seem so, and it's highly likely it was that stigma that was stopped them talking. So stigma certainly is there, but we are getting better with it. And it's just a case of trying to get people talking, trying to get people not to be ashamed about having, poor mental health. And just myself and the Farming Community Network, I'm very lucky that one of my best friends is ex-girlfriend of mine called Julie. If I have a problem, because we all have off days.
Yeah.
We all have off days,
we do.
no matter how good our mental health is. If I have a problem, I will phone Julie. I can phone her about anything. And a problem, shared is very much a problem halved. And every time I've had a problem, I will speak to her and the problem always goes away. So we started this thing, an initiative 18 months ago called the Who's Your Julie campaign, just to get people thinking about who they talk to in a crisis. Because we don't think about it when there's not a crisis.
Exactly.
But you want to reach for these people when there is, and it's a lot easier to think about who they are when there isn't a crisis. So it was just a case of getting people thinking. But no, is there a stigma in the? Yes, there is. But I think slowly, steadily, we are battering it away. We've still got an awful long way to go. But I would say I'm in a farming world which can be quite macho. I've played rugby all my life, which is the same. I'm a man and we're notoriously bad for talking about things. So I really fitted the profile of being the worst person to bottle things up. And luckily, I've never had too much to bottle up. But, if I could keep talking about the stigma and keep breaking the stigma, then hopefully people will be able to talk to their loved ones, talk to their friends, talk to, the helplines, FCN, RABI. They've all got wonderful helplines. They've all got people to talk to. And it's just a case of getting people talking. And so that's essentially what I've set out to do. And if I could, I'm always tweeting and I'm always running. So if I can combine the two, then hopefully it makes a bit of a difference.
Well, thanks for coming on here to talk about it, and good luck for the marathons this year as well. So
thank you. Manchester is 10 days away. I've just had the flu, so preparation hasn't been ideal, but really looking forward to getting over there and getting it done. But it's these things you focus on to get you through the marathon, because 3 hours, well, I got my PB down to 3 hours 45 last year at Manchester, and I'd like to break that. But one thing I'll be thinking about when I always stay in Warrington, because it's quite handy. I'm planning on a trip to Liverpool the day after, as I did last year.
Okay.
And just the thought of a dirty burger on Albert Dock is the day after is one of those things which will hopefully get me through, because they are very long and traumatic things. They say a marathon is a race of two halves, the first half being 20 miles and the second half being 6 miles. And I particularly remember the last 6 miles, the last 4, especially in Manchester, being absolutely brutal. And but I'll be doing it, and in my Farming Community Network, running vest, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. I'm sure there'll be lots of people cheering you on. We're going to finish with the last 2 questions which I ask everyone before the end of the show. The first is, Charles, what is your message for the public? Any message?
Stick with us. From a farming point of view, British agriculture is something I think we can do better. We're a great industry, and we're proud to, grow great food and stick with us. And from with my other hat on, keep moving, keep talking. Whereas, I'm very much involved with the Farming Community Network and delighted to be a judge on Britain's Fittest Farmer this year.
Yeah, of course.
It's just everybody farming, whatever, get some trainers on, keep moving, look after your mental health, look after your neighbours, your colleagues, your friends' mental health. Because friends, colleagues will always be the first line of defence. And so that's my message to the public.
Brilliant. And your message to farmers?
Unite. Let's put on a united front and, hopefully convince the government about the need for food security. Yeah, continue to do what we do for food production and looking after the environment, because I think in the whole we do a good job. We can improve, but I think on the whole we do a good job. And again, keep moving.
And finally, obviously, I'm guessing that FCN would be one, but your recommendation for a blog, podcast, or social media accounts to follow, and that can be farming or non-farming.
Obviously, FCN, as you mentioned, a great organisation, but FCN are one of many. So, they're obviously my favourite. LRSN, also a great charity, but we got YANA, we got Yellow Wellies, RABI. We're really well served in the UK for having really top drawer charities manned by top drawer people to keep us farmers on the straight and narrow, mentally, especially. Follow all them. But I did a podcast a couple of years ago, rock and roll farming podcast with Will Evans. And my answer to him about the best social media account to follow is the same as I'm giving to you. People like John Charles Jones, Woodborough Park, lovely guy, John, and he's just done some fantastic fundraising to send pickups to Ukraine. But I love a bit of banter on Twitter. I think, my Twitter usage, I used to be, hammering vegans, and it was just didn't do any good to anybody. All I'd be doing was promoting their cause. But, obviously nowadays it's all about banter and cats and sunsets and running. And I love those accounts where you have a bit of banter and a bit of banter comes back. And for that, John Charles Jones, top bloke and a great tweeter. But I think there's some wonderful Twitter accounts, but that's the one of note.
Excellent. Well, Charles, thank you so much for coming on.
No, you're all welcome.
Meet the Farmers. It's been an absolute pleasure. That is it for today. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Next week, we'll be talking dairy. I'll be joined by Derbyshire-based dairy farmer Jess Langton, and on the Rural Business Focus podcast this week, we're talking carbon and renewable heat with Ben Tansey and Neil Harrison from Reheat, who run a really interesting company based up in Northumberland. Thanks again to Charles for today and to our primary podcast sponsor, A Plan Rural Insurance, for supporting the show. Please see the show notes for more information and for any links mentioned today. For now, though, I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great week.